Dalton Knecht is inevitable, and if he keeps playing like this, the Tennessee Volunteers, they may not lose another game.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Happy Thursday, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your co-hosts. I'm Andy Patton. He is Isaac Shade over there. Today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, make every moment more. Right now, new customers who join FanDuel today will get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Isaac, we got a bunch of Big East results to cover in the second segment. 4 games, 4 blowouts, what it means for the bubble. We'll talk a little bit about Kyle Filipowski returning for Duke, as we saw in the headlines, what that means for Duke, another injury for them, some other bubbly results as well.
Andy, why did you laugh as you said that? That's not kind.
Because he didn't return from anything. Exactly. He didn't return from anything. We'll get to all of that. We'll get to some other results as well. But, Isaac, we have to start with the biggest games, the biggest results in the SEC. It just means more, and more is what we saw from these teams on Wednesday evening. Dalton Knecht, 39 points. He saw what RJ Davis did against Miami on Monday and thought, well, I can pretty much do that. Went out and came very close to dropping the same total. Really, really incredible game for Dalton Knecht. They knock off the number 11 ranked Auburn Tigers, maintain a share at the top of the SEC standings because Alabama picked up a victory as well. We will get to that, but I want to start with this just jaw-dropping performance from Dalton Knecht in Tennessee.
Yeah, Andy, I mean, gee whiz, what a performance. You know, I thought Tennessee looked like they were going to be in control, and then Auburn, much to their credit, came out in the second half, kind of got things going. Oh, my word, I'm seeing some replays on TV, and Tyler Kolek's like bleeding out his eyebrow. Tennessee started the second half on a 5-0 run. Auburn goes on a 23-6 to run, though, after that to take an 8-point lead. And that, Andy, was the moment.
Yep. Dalton
Knecht goes on a personal 11-3 run from there. How about let's take it one step further. After that, like that Auburn 8-point lead culminated at 12-17. For the rest of the game after that, the score was Dalton Knecht 25, Auburn 21. The man outscores the Tiger by himself. Andy, how about this? His 39 points ties for the third most single game points by a Tennessee Volunteer in the last 35 seasons. Tied with who, Andy? Himself, back on January 16th. What Dalton Knecht is doing is absolutely ridiculous. You said it to me earlier today. I think we were texting about this, and you said, look, if it's not for Zach Edey, I think a lot of us think it's RJ Davis is the player of the year, but my word, I think you said to me, like, I think it's a legit conversation between RJ Davis and Dalton Knecht for second best player in the country.
Yeah, Dalton Knecht has been incredible. And we've talked about it from the very beginning of the season. Like, for Rick Barnes in Tennessee to identify the type of player they need and go find the absolute best version of that player that exists and just pencil them straight into the lineup alongside the guards that they already have. They know who Santiago Vescovi is. They know who Zakai Ziegler is. They know who Jonas Adu is. Like, they know the pieces that they had. And they said, we need a big guard wing type who can go get a bucket, who can shoot from three, who can score.
Wait, they needed offense? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Well, they knew that they had the defense. They knew that they could mask Knecht, who's not terrible on defense, but that's not his strength. And they knew that they could mask that and bring in somebody who just goes out and scores in isolation, scores from three, gets fouled, goes to the free throw line, whatever it is. And Dalton Knecht can do every single one of those things. And it is such a remarkable impact that one player can make for Tennessee. In college basketball, you don't always see one player make a huge difference this way. And especially for a team that was already so good with most of the same pieces, to be able to just add one more player into that mix and have it elevate this team the way that it has. And they're not perfect. This team struggles when Knecht has bad games, but that's how reliant they are on him. And this was, I mean, Auburn's fantastic. They fought back in a game. Jalen Williams was healthy. He played. Like, this is a very, very good Auburn team. And they fought as hard as they possibly could to stay in this game. But Dalton Knecht was just too much for him.
Yeah, and you said, Tennessee might struggle offensively a little bit when Dalton Knecht has bad games.
Mm-hmm.
That win is few and far between, right. And that's part of what makes Rick Barnes' team so successful. By the way, Thompson Bowling Arena has been very good to the Vols. This is the 12th straight home win against an AP top 25 opponent.
Wow.
Phenomenal by them. That is the longest such streak in SEC history. Really well done. You mentioned Jalen Williams being back and healthy. Andy, I mean, let's remember to a couple Saturdays ago when he suffered that injury against Kentucky, that I was like, this dude, ACL or something, like, is done. And so to see him back out, what are we, like 2.5 weeks after that, a week and a half after that, is really good, obviously, for Auburn. But just to see guys healthy, as we always say, we hate to see guys out. We want them playing. We want the best players available. And not only was he available, but he was productive. Andy came off the bench 21 minutes, scored 12 points, had a pretty efficient shooting night other than from three, but 3 boards, 4 assists, a steal, and no turnovers. So I think this is very encouraging for Bruce Pearl as Auburn looks to just continue cementing their seed. Andy, I want to ask you a question, about what you said in the cold open. You said if Dalton Knecht keeps stringing together performances like this, and I know there's probably a little bit of verbal hyperbole here, but you said Tennessee might not lose again. Let me remind you of their schedule down the stretch here, Andy, and then let me ask you if you really believe what you said. Because Saturday, they go to Alabama. Next Wednesday, they go to South Carolina, and then they wrap up the regular season hosting Kentucky, and that's not even getting to the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament. So what level of belief do you legitimately have that Tennessee could run the table down the stretch of the regular season?
I think they're capable of it. I think they are capable of it. I don't think that they will. I don't know that anybody who's going to be betting on Tennessee is betting on them to run the table here just because of that schedule. I think they win at South Carolina. I think they have a good chance of winning at home against Kentucky. I think at Alabama is a really tricky game. That's going to be an interesting kind of offense versus defense. But Tennessee won quite handily the first time.
20-point victory.
Yeah, it was a 20-point victory. Obviously, it's going to be harder on the road, but I think there's a real chance Tennessee wins those 3 games. Now, do they then carry that momentum and win the SEC tournament? Harder to say. But again,
I think at that point, you've done the harder work of winning the regular season, and you can
absolutely. You handle the regular season at that point. I think all those teams that they're playing have, Kentucky's got defensive issues. Alabama's got defensive issues. South Carolina, I think Tennessee is capable of beating even on the road. South Carolina picked up a victory on Wednesday night, but it was a close one against Texas A&M, not a particularly great team there. Alabama also picked up a victory at Ole Miss, kept themselves tied with Tennessee. But I do think the Vols are capable when Knecht is playing like this. That was the key caveat. And I'm saying like this, like Knecht averages 20-something points a game. He doesn't score 39 every night. If Knecht drops 40 against Alabama, they're probably going to win. If he drops 40 against Kentucky, they're probably going to win. So it's more of like, I don't think he plays at that level every game, but if he's playing close to it, yeah, they're really hard to beat.
Well, and those defenses are so terrible in those final 3 games, he very well could. Andy, you mentioned number 14 Alabama winning at Ole Miss 103-88. You mentioned South Carolina winning at Texas A&M 70-60 or 70-68. Man, and it's tough for those 2 unranked home teams who had big bubble opportunities. Both A&M is already on the outside looking in. Ole Miss, it's like, I don't know. Like, is A&M done barring an SEC tournament championship? I think so. But, great road wins for Bama and South Carolina in a year where we've seen road teams very struggle. That's good grief. That's been the storyline there. And by the way, Andy, I guess we should also mention Florida, who's 24th, kind of survives winless in the SEC, Missouri 83-74. And it's not a sexy win. But look, this time of the year, you just want a W. You don't even really care how it happens. Andy, anything else to say on any of those SEC games? Yeah, I mean, I think the craziest fact about these was the fact that Alabama scored 64 points in the second half against Ole Miss. Ole Miss had a 3-point lead
at halftime. Alabama scored literally 64 in the second half. Shout out to them. That offense, when it gets going, is just unbelievable. Aaron Estrada had a triple-double, 18, 10, and 10 for him. I think Ole Miss and A&M are probably on the outside looking in right now. Not as confident about A&M. I think about Ole Miss. I think they could potentially play themselves back in, but A&M I think really needed this one and wasn't able to pick it up, even though they came very close to getting it at the end. Florida maintains pace. They are now tied with both Auburn and Kentucky at a 10-5 record in the SEC, while obviously Alabama and South Carolina keep themselves up near the top with their wins as well.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss, at least at Joe Lunardi's bracketology, was next 4 out ahead of this game. So they'll be even further back at Texas A&M. Andy, and it was funny because the way that Alabama-Ole Miss game started, we were texting like, oh, man, we might be leading the show tonight talking about how Tennessee has taken sole possession of first place because Ole Miss, man, they put up hurting on Bama at the start of this game. But Nate Oates' team came back. Nate got a nice little technical along the way, but they were able to get that victory. Andy, let's move from the SEC to the Big East, where we had 4 games of action on Wednesday night, and not a single one of them was even within a 20-point margin of defeat. And now there are 3 teams really feeling the pressure of the bubble. We're going to break it all down in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed or power or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. Also, with their eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. So with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Andy, we said it just a second ago, but there were 4 Big East games on Wednesday night. Let me read for you the margins of victory in said games. I'll go from lowest to highest. 21, 22, 23, and 33. Those were the margins of these games. And that stinks for a couple teams in particular who were bubble teams really trying to get wins over a couple of the ranked teams in Big East. Leaf and I had talked about this on yesterday's show, and I said, Leaf, which of the Big East bubble teams, Seton Hall or Providence, is more likely to get a win? Seton Hall against Creighton or Providence against Marquette? And I don't honestly in real time right now remember what he said, but it should have been neither because they're going to both lose by more than 20.
Neither will come close.
Yes. So, Andy, what do you make of that for these teams? By the way, let me say in real time, coming into the day for Lunardi, Seton Hall was last 4 buys. They obviously lose. Providence was last 4 in. So they were both projected in the field, but now with these losses, we'll have to see where they sit following when things are refreshed on Thursday or beyond.
Yeah, I feel for Seton Hall because they've continually been like 3rd or 4th place in the Big East regular season, pretty much the entire season. They start the year off with that massive win over UConn. They have a ton of success early in Big East conference play. They stay 3rd or 4th in the conference literally up until this point, and yet they've never really been able to climb off of the bubble. They didn't have a very strong strength of schedule in the non-conference. They've had some bad losses, and they just have never really been able to string together the marquee type wins that they needed outside of course, the UConn win to really cement themselves as having a resume worthy of being in the NCAA tournament. This was an opportunity to do that. You're playing a Creighton team that had already lost to St. John's after that big win over UConn. They're still a top 12 team, top 15 team into this week. You know that they're a little bit susceptible to those kind of losses. And yet instead of going out and picking up what would have been a huge victory here, you get stomped. You get stomped by a good Creighton team. Ryan Kalkbrenner was just overwhelmingly too much for Seton Hall bigs. He had 23 and 10. He was literally perfect from the field, 10 of 10. And I feel for Seton Hall
that's
because
good, right? That's okay.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't think that this game is like a complete deal breaker for Seton Hall, but they have UConn at home, or excuse me, UConn on the road. UConn on the road, they got Marquette at home, and they're on the road against Villanova. They probably need all of them. I don't know if you can pick up all of them. If you lose at UConn, which is probably what's going to happen, and then you also beat Marquette and Nova, maybe if you make a nice run in the Big East tournament, you can get yourself into the field, but they're putting themselves in a really tough position. And I really like this Seton Hall team. I like Kadari Richmond and Alamir Dawes and what they're doing, and I think they'd be a really fun team to be in the NCAA tournament, but I think that their margins right now are really, really thin, and this was a game that even if they'd kept it competitive, it might have looked a little better, but not keeping it competitive is really tough for the Pirates.
Yeah. And I mean, they've already got 2 quad 3 losses on their resume.
That's what's killing them.
You know, like that's just tough. And again, it's the kind of thing where it's not really their fault, right? Like it's USC and Rutgers, who you think should be at worst quad 2 games. And so that's the thing. So I guess don't lose those games is the thing with it there. And look, we had those 2 games, but we also had what we like to call a double bubble game. Andy and I were joking earlier about DMing double bubble and seeing, because I love gum, Andy, and I like to chew it, and maybe they'd sponsor us. Anyway, St. John's goes on the road, by the way, and obliterates Butler 82-59. Andy, Butler beat Providence, but since then, they've lost 5 straight games. Yeah. If you had quizzed me on that, I would not have been able to pull that. You know, I would have been like, I don't know, maybe they've, 2-3 in their last 5 or something like that. Butler now has 11 Big East losses, 5 of them at home. That's unacceptable for a team that's trying to make the bubble. I just don't see it, Andy. And schedule-wise, with what they got left, just DePaul and Xavier is it. You just talked about those opportunities for Seton Hall. At least they've got opportunities. Butler doesn't until the Big East tournament. Yeah,
Butler needed to go at minimum 2-3, probably 3-2 in these last 5 games. I thought their bubble resume was always a little bit spotty, but now I think it's pretty much toast. I mean, again, like you said, DePaul and Xavier left. Even if they win both of them, you still have 11 Big East losses. You still have 5 home losses in conference play. Like, I just don't see it. I don't see it. And look, shout out St. John's. This is a team that felt like they were dead in the water. It really seemed like they were done. Rick Pitino basically seemed like he was cashing it in at his post-game press conference a few weeks ago, where he was it was after the Seton Hall game, and he was just mad.
Burning all the Brit,
Yeah, and he was talking about they're not tough. I'm not having any fun, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? If that was a motivating tactic, which some people kind of thought, oh, that's not going to work, it did. St. John's has rattled off 3 in a row since that game. They are now up to 9-9 in the Big East, and all they have left is DePaul and Georgetown. If they go 11-9 in the Big East, which seems quite plausible at this point, they would then be 19-12 overall. This team could sneak in. The bubble is there's so many Big East teams on the bubble. Basically, every team that's not DePaul and Georgetown, and it's not UConn, Creighton, and Marquette. Pretty much everybody else is somewhere in the bubble conversation, which is very fascinating. And for St. John's, who seemed like they were that last team, they're not going to make it. Now they pick up a couple wins, they crush Butler, and suddenly they look like a team that maybe sneaks in. If you're to play in 11, you do not want to face Rick Pitino. I can promise you that. But I think there's a realistic outcome where that is the situation St. John's is in.
Well, for the Big East, though, here's the thing. I love what you said there. Like the bookends, you've got the big 3 that are clearly in, and you've got those bottom 2 that are very clearly out. Of the, what does that leave? 6 in the middle. You've got 2 that are projected in right now, but just barely, with Seton Hall and Providence. And then the others are somewhere floating around. And so it's like you expect another, I don't know what we'll end up with in the Big East, probably 5 or 6 if I had to put a number on it right now. But outside of the big 3, I don't see anybody being higher than a 10, maybe 9 they could get up to. And so, I mean, the Big East might have some of the numbers, but they won't have the seeds outside of UConn, Creighton, and Marquette.
Yep, 100%. The other game, we didn't mention it. We'll just give a quick speed by. Xavier beat DePaul. If you were wondering which team got beat by 33 points, you probably should have guessed that it was DePaul, and you would be correct. Xavier, I guess they're still on the bubble. They're 14-14 now on the year. They're only 8-9 in the Big East. I feel like Sean Miller's team is probably still on the outs, but when you're playing DePaul, the best thing you can do is beat them by as many points as possible and help your net ranking, and that's what Xavier managed to do here.
By the way, Andy, we should mention about Marquette. We didn't say this. While Tyler Kolek did not flunk out of school, as some troll Twitter account said earlier on Wednesday, he did leave the second half of the Marquette game with an oblique injury. So we're going to have to keep our eyes on that. Hopefully it's nothing too serious for Shaka Smart's point guard, man, because they need that dude to run the ship.
Yes, they absolutely do. And speaking of injuries, maybe not the most significant injuries, but Kyle Filipowski, he did manage to suit up for Duke in their very huge win over Louisville. But the Blue Devils did lose a freshman guard who might be out for a while, according to John Shire. We're going to talk about that and a handful of other results from Wednesday after I tell you about today's sponsor, FanDuel. Folks, get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 in your pocket if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Not a ton of great action on Thursday night, but Gonzaga does head to the Chase Center, the home of the Golden State Warriors, to take on the San Francisco Dons. 4.5-point favorites. They won by 5 at home. I think there's a good chance they win by more than 5 on this road environment that they're taking on in San Francisco. The Zags team is very hot right now. If you want to throw some money down on that, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, Isaac, handful of ranked teams that were in action on Wednesday night. We're going to get you recaps on those, talk about a few other bubbly results, and then maybe speedily preview some of the games coming up tonight on Thursday. First, Duke took care of business against Kenny Payne and the Cardinals, 84-59 final score there. We're not surprised, of course, that Duke won. Louisville has not been good in the last couple of years, frankly. Filipowski played. We're not also surprised by that either. Seemed like he was going to be okay after the court storming incident at Wake Forest. He finished with 9 points, 10 boards, and 6 assists. But the big story in this game is not Filipowski playing, because we kind of expected that. It's not Duke winning, because we definitely expected that. It is that the Blue Devils were without Caleb Foster, star freshman for them. His right foot was in a boot. He was on one of the scooters, had his leg up on that. And John Shire said that he's going to be out, quote, for some time. So that is obviously a potentially big factor for Duke heading into the last couple games of the regular season, heading into a home battle against the Tar Heels, heading into the ACC tournament potentially, depending on how long he is out. So like you said, we never want to see injuries for anybody. We hope Caleb Foster's okay and that he's able to suit up before the end of the season. But if he's got a big boot on, the odds of him playing before Selection Sunday at least are very slim.
Yeah, man, that's tough. Especially you get these foot injuries late in the season, Andy. Yeah. That's always concerning. So hopefully Foster will be able to get back to action soon, and we'll see how Coach Shire manages that. Andy, how about let's go to the Big 12? Let's switch gears there. We're number 8, Iowa State. Got a nice home win over Oklahoma, 58-45, which that's kind of an expected score. It's kind of an expected result. But, man, this was we talked about some of those Big East bubble teams having big opportunities. Oklahoma, it's just like this was a massive opportunity for them to go to Ames, knock off an Iowa State team that's been really good. But guess what, Andy? Iowa State is yet to lose at home this season. Demarion Watson has 15 points, 9 boards. You talk about perfection from the field, 7 of 7, including 1 of 1 from 3. For Iowa State, perhaps most importantly, as you think about regular season standings and then Big 12 tournament seedings, they're now a game and a half above both Kansas and Baylor. And so critically important there. And then I forget, I'm not looking at the standings in real time, how far back they are of Houston. Is it just a game?
They're 1.5 they're 1.5 back on Houston.
No, exactly a game.
Oh, they're a game back on Houston.
Houston's 12-3, Iowa State 11-4. So
gotcha.
Just right there. But and then actually they are exactly 2 games ahead of both Kansas and Baylor. So it must not have maybe it hadn't refreshed when you looked at those earlier. So that's where we're sitting with that for Iowa State, man. What a great season and great performance, regardless of what happens down the stretch here.
Moving over to the Big Ten, Illinois won a shootout, and that is the best way to describe this game against Minnesota. 105-97 was the final score in this one. The combined points was the most in the Big Ten this season. Also, really fantastic fact from ESPN's Jared Burson. Minnesota scored 1.48 points per possession and lost. Here's the deal. They're the 312th team in the last 15 years to hit a points per possession of 1.48 or higher. Of those 312 teams to do that, they're only the second to also lose. That is insane levels of offensive efficiency to still not be able to hold Illinois to under 100 points, which is what they needed to do to win this one. 5 total players in this game were over 20 points. Terrence Shannon had 29 for the Illini. Dawson Garcia had 29 for Minnesota. Fantastic performances from the star guards on both of those teams. Really high-level offensive game, which you don't always see or associate with the Big Ten Conference, but this was a really fun contest to watch. Not really a bubbly result. Illinois, it's helpful for them to have picked this one up, certainly to avoid falling further in the AP poll. Minnesota's not really in that bubble conversation, although they're having probably a slightly better season than people would have expected, but a nice win for Illinois. They're now 12-5 in the Big Ten, 21-7 overall, and they close with a really tough schedule to get through here in the Big Ten. They got Wisconsin on the road, they got Purdue at home, and then they go at Iowa to close out conference play.
Oof, Andy, one other ranked team we want to mention, and that is Arizona, who was at Arizona State. Also, speaking of the Arizona schools, the Oregon schools are playing on the TV in front of me here as we record. 51-all, 12.5 to go in the second half from Eugene, Oregon.
Yep.
Anyway, Arizona, look, we don't need to get too much into this game. They win at Arizona State, 85-67. Andy, all 5 starters are in double figures, led by Kylan Boswell with 17. How about that? Nice balanced approach from Tommy Lloyd's team. Umar Balo gets a double-double, 14 and 13. So they maintain that 1-game lead over Wazoo in the Pac-12 standings. And Andy, you just talked about a tough closing schedule. Might I offer you an easy closing schedule? Because Arizona hosts Oregon on Saturday, and then next Saturday, they are at the LA schools. So
is there any situation where it's not an easy schedule for Arizona?
Yeah, that's fair.
What would have been tough? Colorado, Utah on the road, I guess.
Yeah.
That's all that's left.
We'll see what happens there. Now, look, Arizona, there's been a time or two where they've not actually done exactly great for themselves, but we expect them to take care of Oregon at home and then the LA schools on the road. Yeah.
Isaac, 3 more Power 6 games that had kind of bubbly-ish implications. Right. I'm just going to tell you what happened in these games.
Power through, Andy. Do it.
You take it whatever way you want. But Northwestern, they go on the road, win at Maryland, 68-61 in that one. Northwestern was a 9 seed in Lunardi's latest bracketology. They were kind of trending down. I think a loss here probably would have pushed them onto the bubble, but they pick up that victory, stay in the NCAA tournament conversation. Moving over to the Pac-12, Colorado defeats Cal in Boulder, 88-78. KJ Simpson, monstrous game from him. 27 points, 8 assists, 7 boards, and 4 steals. Tristan Da Silva also had 22, 7, and 6. Why not? Those 2 guys are fantastic. Really excellent game from them. Again, Colorado's first 4 out in Lunardi's latest, so this was more of it's not a win that helps them, but a loss would have really hurt them. Yeah. So avoiding a loss to Cal here helps Colorado stay in that bubble conversation. And then kind of a similar situation here with Virginia. They beat Boston College 72-68 in that one. Interestingly, it was 27-23 at halftime, and then both teams scored 45 points in the second half. So just a very dramatic, different game in the second half than the first half. UVA was one of the last 4 teams in. So again, Beating Boston College doesn't help them a ton, but losing to Boston College definitely would have hurt them, and they avoided that. So all three of these teams kind of stay in the same spots that they were, maybe get a slight bump, whereas had any of them lost, we'd be having a very different conversation about their NCAA tournament hopes.
So, Andy, just to make sure I'm clear here, you're telling me that Virginia got up over 50 points on Wednesday night?
They did. They scored 45.5, which is pretty remarkable.
That's incredible. Going back to Oklahoma, Joe Lunardi had them as an 8 seed coming into play, and Northwestern is a 9. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just kind of flip-flop when he refreshes next. Andy, a couple cool, just quick rando shout-outs. High Point clinches the Big South regular season with a 196 victory in overtime over Winthrop on Wednesday night. It's their first regular season championship since 2016. But how about this? Alan Huss, in his first season at High Point, leads them to a title. They were picked 7th in the preseason. They go 24 and, or as of now, they're 24-6 in overall, 13-2 in Big South play. That's the most regular season wins in program history, and they get to host the Big South tournament. Great stuff there. Andy, quickly, just a couple games of note for Thursday night. USC is at number 19 Wazoo. That's 10:30 Eastern on the Pac-12 network, so you can just keep me up to date on that. And then in the West Coast Conference, we have 2 really big midweek opportunities for St. Mary's and Gonzaga before they meet up on Saturday. St. Mary's is at Pepperdine, 11 Eastern on CBS Sports Network, and 23 Gonzaga is at San Francisco, actually in the Chase Center. That's also 11 Eastern on ESPN2. Obviously, a much more difficult game for Gonzaga than it will be for St. Mary's. So hopefully they can kind of both stay where they're at heading into that massive matchup on Saturday. Well, Mr. Patton, it's been a great chat as always. There's just so much good stuff happening. Caitlin Clark's out there on the women's side doing work on Wednesday night. Speaking of inevitable, my word, that woman, dude, she's something else. I believe now she is just 18 points shy of breaking Pistol Pete's all-time D1 scoring record. Great stuff there. Folks, Andy and I'll be back with you on Friday's show. We'll be getting you ready for what's going to be, of course, another loaded weekend, so make sure you don't miss out on that. If you're not already in the Locked On College Basketball Discord community, come on in, be part of that. The link's in the show notes. It's free to join. If you haven't subscribed on video and audio, please do that. Smash the like button if you're watching on YouTube so that we know you are here. You know, I'd like to apologize to someone right now, and that's the Lawyer family. I'd also say go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.